Ready to explore the cutting edge of digital infrastructure? I'm Carrie Charles, your host of Let's Get Digital. Join me as we dive into the ideas, technologies, and leaders transforming the way we connect. From wireless telecom to fiber networks, data centers, and beyond. Sponsored by Broadstaff in partnership with RCR Wireless News. Now, let's dive in and let's get digital.
Welcome to Let's Get Digital. I'm Carrie Charles, your host, and we're going to have some fun today. I have an amazing guest for you. His name is Vince Cioci. I heard him speak recently, actually, I don't know, maybe even a year ago, and I said, you have got to come on my show. He is the CEO of Luck Grove, and you're going to hear a lot more about Luck Grove. They are revolutionizing telecom and utility spaces. So, Vince, thanks for joining me.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to say before we get into everything, we really appreciate what you and Broadstaff are doing for the industry and for Luck Grove. So thank you. Just want to get that out of the way first before we dive into everything else.
Thank you. We just love it. We love it. And this is a lot of fun too.
Awesome.
So Vince, I want to hear your story and, what got you into the fiber, the utilities world, what made you just fall in love with telecom?
Of course. So just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Long Island, New York City area. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I was homeschooled up until college and ended up going to school in Oswego, New York, is upstate. My entry into fiber wasn't something I'd planned out at all. I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be a telecom engineer or construction professional. It just kind of happens to you. After graduating, I was working in restaurants and the food manufacturing industry when I met Mike Roberts. He introduced me to telecom, and the way I always describe it is like stepping into the Wild West. There was a lot happening, a lot of opportunity, not a whole lot of structure at the time, which for me, I thrive in chaos, so it was very exciting. What really pulled me in was, the idea of building something real and like physical infrastructure that people rely on every single day. It's extremely exciting being able to see, us be able to create that. So at that point, I'd already had one son and another one on the way. So it wasn't the safest move to just drop everything and jump in, but I did. I started as a 1099 field surveyor, learned the business from the ground up. Mike mentored me and Joe Roberts mentored me. And over time, I worked my way into leadership roles and then eventually into the CEO role. That's where I am today.
What an inspiration. So field surveyor to CEO.
Yep, that's right. A lot of fielding poles, a lot of freezing cold mornings, but it gave me the opportunity to appreciate what we are actually doing out there, and then also getting involved in some construction tasks as well before I eventually got into leadership roles. Not everybody gets to experience that from the ground up, and I'm glad I did because it gives a true appreciation for what our guys are doing and our people are doing out there every single day. So
yes, I love it. So tell us about Luck Grove, a little bit about the founding story and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
No problem. So Luck Grove was founded in 2008 by Joe and Mike Roberts, a father-son team. Joe had a really unique background. He started digging ditches for the Bell system and then put himself through night school, became a lead engineer, and eventually worked on major telecom infrastructure projects internationally. So he was actually working for the Kingdom of Iran before the Ayatollah came in, and then he was working for the King and Queen of Thailand. So he was working on some really cool large-scale projects a little before his time. He was really just a pioneer in that realm. When he came back to the U.S., he partnered with Mike Roberts, his son, and started Luck Grove right as fiber was starting to begin traction. So that was 2008. Early on, the company was small, very execution-driven. We built a reputation for ourselves by doing work the right way and just, delivering, consistency and a great product. So when I joined, I think there was about 3 employees when I joined, but we saw how large the opportunity in fiber was going to become. And, we made a very intentional decision to build for scale. That meant, bringing engineering, construction, operations capabilities in-house and building the internal structure to support growth. And, you always hear me harp on that all the time, but, it's truly the building pillars that we had to put together to be able to experience the growth that we have. So today, Luck Grove is a fully integrated engineering and construction company supporting fiber to the home deployments, MDU build outs, and now we're expanding into hyperscale data center environments.
So fiber expansion feels like it's really entering a new phase right now with BEAD funding, new investment. I mean, it's on fire, right? And then the
Absolutely.
data center boom as well. What are you seeing on the ground that gives us visibility into the next 5 years?
So, Carrie, I looked at it like we hit halftime and we're heading into the second half of the big game. So, the first phase was all about speed, building as fast as possible. You could throw a dart on a board and, we're building there today, if you're the ILEC or the ISP. So covering as much ground as possible. We're seeing a shift towards, finishing the job. That means filling in coverage gaps, going deeper into existing markets, activating infrastructure that was already built but not fully utilized, like the MDUs, leaving the drop coils behind and then going back and revisiting those opportunities. So, on the ground, we're seeing engineering activity ramp back up, more planning's happening, and operators are positioning themselves for the next phase. There's still a massive amount of work left to do. So from our perspective, the next 5 years remain very strong. It's not slowing down. I think it's just becoming more focused and more strategic now.
It's interesting because the industry, from what we felt, slowed down for a bit while construction
Absolutely.
caught up. And
Yeah.
so what you're saying is the fiber build, that whole space is entering a real acceleration phase.
Yeah,
I mean, are we ready for this?
I don't think we're ever ready for any of these builds, but we try our best to be. But, I think we're right on the front edge of it now. Engineering is active across a lot of markets, and, that's always the leading indicator. Once designs are complete, permits start clearing, construction follows very quickly after that. What we're seeing now is a backlog of projects that we're waiting on approvals starting to move forward. And when they move, they're large scale deployments that require coordination, execution, all that good stuff. So I don't think it feels like a slow ramp. I think it feels more like a strategic, like a release of pressure. So, at the same time, it's more controlled than the first wave with a stronger focus on strategic builds and execution.
Let's go. I'm excited.
It's time. It's time to go.
So we talk a lot about fiber, but you're also seeing growth around MDUs and hyperscale data centers.
Absolutely.
So how are those opportunities changing the kind of work that your teams are doing? And also for those who don't know what an MDU is, maybe just explain that. There's a lot of acronyms in our industry.
Of course. So MDU stands for multi-dwelling unit. So you think apartment buildings or multi-tenant. It's, MTU, MXU, MDU. There's a million acronyms for everything, but just think multi-tenant unit, think commercial unit, etc. So major opportunity right now. We're just starting to fully tap into it. There's thousands of buildings that were passed during the initial fiber builds where service loops were left, but buildings were never fully built out. So, providers are going back and targeting those properties, which creates a more detailed and hands-on type of work. Everything's nuanced when you get into, actual customer facing type stuff. So, we are currently working on one of the largest MDU deployments in the country right now. Luck Grove is doing a turnkey construction model on that, and it's proven to be quite an experience. It's amazing. It's great. So we expect that type of work to become much more common. On the hyperscale side, very exciting shift. A lot of the same transferable skills that we've learned over the years working fiber to the home, but a little more specialized. You need a little bit more of experience when you're working with the amount of fiber cables and splices and the structured cabling type diagrams and layouts that you have to do. But again, I believe that the last fiber to the home big deployment really prepared us to start handling these types of jobs. So we're still early in that. We do have a few projects that are underway, but we are expecting that to grow very quickly.
So one of the biggest constraints in the industry right now is what I talk about all the time is workforce and talent. How serious is the talent shortage in, fiber world and data center world? And what roles are you seeing are the hardest to fill?
So it is the biggest issue in the industry right now, hands down. I have something written down here. The U.S. needs roughly 350,000 additional construction workers just to meet this demand just this year alone, 2026, and over 90% of firms are struggling to hire. So, I mean, if that doesn't say something, I don't know what else will, but, and that's not just telecom, that's across all of construction and infrastructure. So there's a major gap between the amount of work available and the number of qualified workers. So, when projects move, they move aggressively because everybody's competing for the same labor pool. So the hardest roles to fill are, experienced engineers, project managers, skilled crews, and specialized technicians like the data center splicers that I had mentioned earlier, and other low voltage professionals in the MDU space. So it's not just a hiring issue, it's a pipeline issue.
So look, Lutgrove built an in-house engineering school. You told me about this.
Yes.
That can take someone with no telecom background and turn them into a fiber engineer in weeks. So how does that work? And why was that so important to you to build that capability internally?
So that came directly from that workforce challenge that, we were just talking about. I think, we realized early on that we weren't going to be able to hire our way out of it. So we built our own pipeline. We bring people in with strong computer skills, specifically for engineering. We bring people in with strong computer skills, work ethic, the right mindset. And even if they don't have telecom experience, we train them internally. So we are essentially minting telecommunications engineers and designers. We combine experienced mentors, folks who've been in the industry for a long time, like the Mikes and Joes, and we combine them with the internal systems that we've developed at Lutgrove, and then actual real project exposure. We put people on real projects so they are learning on the job as they are completing tasks. So, with the right structure, we've been able to develop productive telecommunications professionals much faster than expected. I mean, like I said, we went from 3 employees to well over 200 engineers in a very short amount of time. And that was just due to my awesome team and implementing that quote unquote school, telecommunications engineering school. So major advantage for us, but we're applying that same model to construction. It's not always, construction engineering. Sometimes we're like oil and water, but we're trying to bridge the gap with some of the skills that we've learned when training our engineers.
Vince, this is one of the solutions. Obviously, this is not an easy problem to solve, the workforce shortage that we're experiencing now. But I think that training programs internally, it is, we have to go there because we just simply don't have enough people in the industry, and we can't keep just poaching people from one another, right? No. We've got to bring in new talent.
Make more. We got to create. We got to copy paste. That's what we got to do.
And one day, Vince, it would be so nice if I can, talk to a guest on the podcast and they don't say I fell into telecom or I, exactly. accidentally got into fiber.
Right.
I really want it to be, oh no, I planned this and I wanted to get into the data center world and digital infrastructure. In fact, like someday that's going to happen. But I do think that what you're doing is what every company needs to do, no matter what size, is to build these internal training programs. So hats off to you.
Absolutely. We're all in this together at the end of the day. We all got to get the job done. There's plenty of work out there for everybody. So I encourage everybody to, if they're not doing it already, definitely do that model. It's the way to go.
So culture seems to be a huge part of your growth strategy. When companies are trying to scale quickly and in a competitive labor market, what does it really take to build a culture where people want to stay?
Right. So, culture is a major focus for us. There's the one thing, compensation always matters, of course. But beyond that, people want to feel like they're part of something, part of something big, growing, feel valued, and actually enjoy where they work. We try to create an environment that balances serious work with energy and engagement. So that includes everything from internal events like the holiday cookie decorating that we do, which is fun. Courtney loves to put those together, to competitions. We have video game competitions in office for like actual decent sized cash prizes and team driven activities, stuff like that. So, a lot of that is driven by our HR team. Again, Courtney Walker is the best. So, we're just very lucky to have folks like that can foster an environment that everyone feels like they're having fun, but also getting the job done at the same time.
So we've seen these crazy hype cycles before in our industry. Do you think this new wave of funding and BEAD will actually complete the job, or are we setting ourselves up for another cycle of overbuild and slow down?
So what's interesting to me right now is that the industry is already active. So, there's engineering underway, projects are moving, and real demand is driving the work forward. So, this next phase is dependent on BEAD. It's already happening. But what BEAD does do is accelerate and expand that momentum. We have a couple great BEAD related projects with some great customers that, we are definitely seeing are adding, just compounding this next wave of growth that's happening across the country. So, BEAD helps fund areas that wouldn't be addressed as quickly otherwise and supports a more complete build out across the country. I also think this phase is more disciplined than previous cycles. Operators are being more strategic in how they deploy capital and where they build. So that's where BEAD comes in and allows, takes away that fear to, enter markets they normally wouldn't. Instead of creating another boom and bust cycle, BEAD extends that current growth trajectory, I would say. And from our perspective, it's going to significantly strengthen the second half of this fiber expansion by far.
So if the industry succeeds in building out fiber everywhere over the next decade, what does the digital infrastructure landscape look like for future generations, in your opinion?
So I think there will always be work. MDUs, again, that's going to be a while to build out all these buildings with high-speed fiber connectivity, upgrades, system upgrades, maintenance, service drops, and data centers. I don't see data centers slowing down anytime soon as long as AI is still as popular as it is and only getting more popular. But, what's really interesting is what comes next. I think the demand for connectivity, data, and power are all increasing at the same time, namely capital power. We need electricity and energy to power a lot of these builds that are happening. And then, continuously keep AI where it needs to be. So, electrical infrastructure is becoming a major constraint. Our grid is failing and definitely not where it needs to be. Infrastructure is dated and, there's a massive shortage of electricians right now. I wish I had the stat with me, but it's staggering the amount of people that we need to be able just to keep what we have, not just even grow it. So, we're going to see more convergence between telecom, data infrastructure, and electrical systems. And that's the intersection of where a lot of future opportunity will be for companies like ours. That's definitely where my next vision is with Luckgrove. So it's exciting.
Very, very exciting. I want to ask you another question about Luckgrove because there's a lot of companies out there. There's companies that are in a similar space as Luckgrove. How do you create a company that stands out, that does things differently? And, what are those things that would you say that Luckgrove really does different and better?
So that's a good one. I think that, just being responsive as possible to the customer and transparent is one of the most important parts of working in this industry. You need to call people back. You need to do what you say you're going to do. Hit your, if you're not going to hit your ECDs, make sure they know that ahead of time and don't mess with anybody's, expectations. But, just being transparent and responsive. We all make mistakes all the time. So, owning up to those mistakes, but also having a plan to fix and deliver a quality product at the end of the day is really what puts you above everybody else. Like I said, there's plenty of work out there for everybody. There's folks that, might not do the job 100%. So as long as you're there, trying your best, getting the work done and doing your absolute best to deliver that quality product is what will set you aside in this industry.
Communication is so important, and so many companies get that wrong. And you said responsiveness.
It has
that's partnership, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to know a little bit more about you before we close. What drives you, Vince? What just makes you motivated every day? And every time I talk to you, you are so excited and you've got all this passion and energy and you're in a good mood. And what is it? Give me the secret sauce here.
So, obviously I would say the first thing is my family and my kids. Want to do is provide them the best life I possibly can. And I also would love to see them involved in one way or another in a company with me, whether it's Luckgrove or some other venture that we go on in the future. So that's exciting that I have this opportunity to create opportunities, which is awesome. And I truly just, at the end of the day, love this industry. I think it's extremely exciting. I just love being able to make things that other people can enjoy. I mean, we all use our phones every day. We all use the internet every day. And to play even a small part in that is really rewarding to me.
I can feel your passion, Vince. Thank you. I'm so excited you came on the show, and I hope to see you at the next event. I'm sure
Absolutely.
I will.
I definitely will. Thank you so much, Carrie. It was great.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Get Digital. This podcast is powered by Broadstaff, a national staffing firm specializing in digital infrastructure talent. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join me next time as we explore more stories at the intersection of technology, talent, and transformation. Until then, let's get digital.